The crystal tumbler felt cold against Marcus Chen's fingertips as he lifted it toward his lips, the amber liquid inside catching the soft glow of the charity gala's chandeliers. He'd given the same speech 100 times, gratitude for the donors, hope for the foundation's future, empty promises wrapped in expensive words. The whiskey was his reward for playing the part, for pretending that writing checks could fill the hollowness that had consumed him since the accident. Took everything that mattered. He didn't notice her at first. Nobody ever did. Elena Vasquez moved through the glittering ballroom like a shadow, her server's uniform pressed crisp despite the grueling double shift, her dark eyes downcast as she navigated between tables laden with food that cost more than her monthly rent. She'd learned long ago that invisibility was a survival skill for people like her, the ones who cleaned up after the wealthy, who existed only to serve and then disappear. But Elena had something the champagne-drunk elite around her didn't. She paid attention. She'd seen the man in the gray suit slip something into the billionaire's drink. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she processed what her eyes had witnessed. It happened so fast, a subtle tilt of the hand, a small vial's contents emptying into the glass while everyone else watched. Marcus Chen stepped down from the podium. The man had vanished into the crowd before she could even think to call out. And who would believe her anyway? A poor girl in a borrowed uniform, accusing a guest at a $1,000-a-plate event? Elena's fingers trembled as she gripped her serving tray. She thought of her abuela's words, whispered across their tiny kitchen table in the housing project. Mija, when you see evil happening, silence makes you part of it. Her grandmother had crossed a border with nothing, had cleaned houses until her knees gave out, all while maintaining that bone-deep certainty that doing right mattered more than staying safe. Marcus had set the poisoned glass down on the high-top table beside him, distracted by a conversation with a board member. Elena had maybe 30 seconds. She moved without thinking, her body operating on instinct and inherited courage. Weaving through the crowd, she approached his table from the side, her heart threatening to break through her chest. She could lose her job. Worse if she was wrong, she'd humiliate herself in front of hundreds of people who already saw her as less than human. But if she was right and did nothing, with practiced grace, Elena lifted the tray level with the table. In one fluid motion born from thousands of hours serving people who never thanked her, she let her elbow brush the poisoned glass. It toppled, the liquid spilling across the white tablecloth in an amber stain. "Oh God, I'm so sorry, sir." Her voice came out exactly as it should, horrified, apologetic, small. She grabbed napkins, dabbing frantically at the mess while deliberately knocking the glass to the floor where it shattered. Evidence destroyed. "Please let me get you another drink immediately." "What were you having?" Marcus Chen stared at the chaos, his jaw tight. Elena could see the flash of irritation cross his features, the way his eyes barely registered her as a person. She was used to that look. What she wasn't prepared for was the man in the gray suit, now visible across the ballroom, his face drained of color as he watched her clean up the spill. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second, and the pure malice in his gaze confirmed everything. He turned and walked quickly toward the exit. "It's fine," Marcus said coldly, his voice carrying the exhaustion of someone going through motions. "Just forget it." But Elena couldn't forget it. As he turned away, dismissing her like she was air, she saw him reach for a second glass, another whiskey, sitting on the opposite side of the table. Her blood turned to ice. Had the man poisoned too? Or was this one safe? She had no way of knowing, no time to think. "Sir, wait!" The words burst from her lips before she could stop them. Everyone within earshot turned to stare. Marcus Chen, billionaire CEO, philanthropist, one of the most powerful men in the city, looked at her with genuine confusion. People like her didn't tell people like him to wait. Elena's supervisor was already moving toward her, his face purple with rage, but she ignored him. "That drink," she said, her voice shaking but determined. "Please don't drink it." "Excuse me?" Marcus's confusion shifted toward annoyance. "Mr. Chen, I am so deeply sorry." Her supervisor grabbed her arm, his grip bruising. "She'll be terminated immediately." "Please accept." "I saw someone put something in your drink," Elena said, the words tumbling out in a desperate rush. A man in a gray suit. I know how this sounds. I know you have no reason to believe me. But please, just don't drink anything until you can have it tested, please. The ballroom had gone eerily quiet. 300 faces turned toward the scene, toward the poor server girl making wild accusations. Elena could feel her life, splitting in two, the life where she'd kept silent and kept her job, and this new terrifying reality where she'd spoken truth and would pay the price. Marcus's expression was unreadable. He looked at the glass, at Elena's pleading face, at the crowd watching with mixture of shock and second-hand embarrassment. Then he looked toward the exit where the man in gray had disappeared. "Security," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying absolute authority. "Lock down all exits. No one leaves. And get me my head of security immediately." He turned back to Elena, really seeing her for the first time. "Describe him. The man you saw." 20 minutes later, security cameras confirmed what Elena had witnessed. The man in gray, Jacob Reeves, a former business partner nursing a grudge and facing bankruptcy, had been apprehended trying to leave through the kitchen. Both drinks tested positive for a lethal dose of a rare poison that would have appeared to be a heart attack. Marcus Chen would have been dead before the ambulance arrived. Elena sat in a back office, still shaking, while police took her statement. She'd already been told her employment was terminated, her supervisors revenge for embarrassing him, and she had no idea how she'd make rent next month. But at least she'd sleep tonight knowing she hadn't let a man die through her silence. The door opened and Marcus Chen walked in alone. Up close, Elena could see the lines of grief etched around his eyes, the weight he carried like a physical thing. He sat down across from her, and for a long moment neither spoke. "You saved my life," he finally said, "at great cost to yourself." Elena shrugged, tears threatening. "Anyone would have—" "No." His voice was firm. "They wouldn't. 300 people in that ballroom, and you were the only one who saw. More importantly, you were the only one who cared enough to risk everything." He paused, something breaking in his expression. "Can I ask you something? Why? You didn't know me. I didn't even acknowledge you when you first spilled that drink. Why would you sacrifice your livelihood for a stranger?" Elena thought of her grandmother, of the border crossing and the decades of invisible labor. She thought of all the people who had helped her, family when they had every reason to turn away. "Because we're not supposed to be strangers," she said softly. "We're supposed to be human beings who look out for each other. Rich or poor, powerful or invisible, we're all just people trying to make it through. And I couldn't watch you die. Not when I could do something about it." Marcus Chen's eyes glistened. Later, Elena would learn that his wife and daughter had died 2 years ago in a car accident, that he'd been going through motions ever since. That part of him had wanted the whiskey to be his last drink, poison or not. But in that moment, watching this young woman who had nothing risk everything, simply because it was right, something dormant in him flickered back to life. "What's your name?" he asked. "Elena Vasquez." "Elena," he repeated. "You're hired. Not as a server, as the director of my foundation. Your job will be to identify people who need help and make sure they get it. Real help, not just charity galas and tax write-offs. I'm also establishing a scholarship fund in your name for students from underserved communities. And I'm paying off your family's debts, covering your grandmother's medical expenses, and setting up a trust fund to ensure you never have to choose between doing what's right and surviving." Elena's tears spilled over. "Sir, I can't accept—" "You already did," Marcus said gently. "The moment you chose kindness over self-preservation, you accepted that actions have consequences. These are the consequences. Let me be clear, this isn't charity. You're not a project or a tax deduction. You're the person who reminded me why living matters, who showed me that humanity isn't dead, just dormant in people who've forgotten how to see each other. You gave me my life back twice tonight, once from poison, and once from the spiritual death I've been dying for 2 years. 3 years later, the Vasquez Foundation had distributed over $50 million to individuals and families in crisis, each grant personally approved by Elena, who'd become known for her ability to see people others overlooked. Marcus Chen, no longer going through motions, worked alongside her, relearning how to connect, how to care, how to live in a world where the measure of success wasn't money but the number of lives. Touched with genuine compassion, And sometimes, late at night when the office was quiet, Marcus would look at the photo on his desk. Elena with her grandmother at the foundation's opening, both women beaming, and remember the crystal tumbler, the spilled whiskey, and the poor girl who switched his glass in silence, saving not just his life but his soul, proving that kindness needs no permission and heroism wears no disguise. It simply acts, expecting nothing, changing everything.